In Lakesh in Veritas, everyone. Sending you the frequencies of oneness and truth. You are now tuned into Of the Sun, Suncast, our weekly podcast bringing you elevated topics focused on expanding ourselves and humanity into becoming truth and moving into oneness. Coming live all the way from one mind, we have Laota of the Sun, the architect of this vibrant organism, who provides of the Sun-ers wisdom and guidance so they can find the truth to be free. I am Tavars of the Sun, certified instructor and practitioner of the Sun modalities and creative genius behind Of the Sun's artwork, programs, and sessions. And we also have Jessica of the Sun, author of 50 Women Anthology, an advocate for Of the Sun, currently learning the teachings. So in Lakesh in Veritas.
In Lakesh in Veritas.
In Lakesh in Veritas.
Yes, welcome, welcome. Before we begin, we have a brief commercial break. In Lakesh in Veritas, do you find yourself in loop patterns of self-sabotage? Well, maybe. Okay, I'm done. Today's topic is self-sabotage, and we're going to go deep exploring this idea because this is something that all humans are experiencing. They're experiencing both parts of it and the makers and creators of it. And one thing that's interesting about self-sabotage is it's an inside job. And with every podcast, there's a common theme where we're always looking at ourselves. What part do we have in this? What is our role within the script, within the movie of this, or the scene of sabotage that is taking place? So we have a few different stories, and like I said, we're going to dive deep into exploring what self-sabotage is, how this plays out, and also tools and solutions so we can move ourselves into correction so we no longer have that experience, where we can be victorious. So I'm going to kick things off where I was exploring my own self-sabotage last night in a salt bath with about 3 different types of the sun salts, super amplified. And I could see that sabotage, again, it's an inside job. And personally with myself, I saw that it's essential to care more about upholding the truth instead of appeasing the delusions of those who are in fear of being the truth. And one of the things that I understood through my experiences is that when I was appeasing, I was automatically becoming part of the lie. Becoming part of the lie goes against the essence of who we are. And ultimately, whether we're conscious or unconscious, going against who we are is a form of self-sabotage. So I see that self-sabotage is a holographic scenario where the victim and the perpetrator are literally one and the same. And so basically, it's like you're willfully smacking yourself all upside the head via the other you outside of yourself that is reflecting back to you all that you are. And I mean all that I am, as I'm reliving the memories of the sabotage and the experiences, and how I attracted these to myself. So anyone have any initial thoughts on this idea of sabotage?
I have several things that you said I think are noteworthy. You brought up the idea of appeasement, and I think there needs to be a little bit more understanding. So this idea of agreeing with things you're not in agreement with, it really speaks to the incongruency of our last podcast, or 2 podcasts ago, when we talked about you moving and there's only pain and suffering. Someone says, I want you to do something for me. You don't want to do it. And then you do it anyway. Then you hate it the whole time. And then you hate them for making you do it. And then they hate you for hating them for making them being in agreement with what they didn't want you to be. So it becomes a alphabet soup of resentment. And there's only pain and suffering in that. So the idea that you were saying that you become part of the lie is so accurate. To be in appeasement means you are in taking part in the thing that is not the truth. If the truth is the person wants you to go to the movies and you don't want to go, that's the truth. If the if the appeasement is you're going to go and be resentful the whole time you're there, then that's the lie that you're perpetrating, and everyone knows it. The person who insisted that you come and has enslaved you, and you have agreed to the enslavement, the aspect of you sitting there being resentful, the wishing you had stayed home to wash your hair or whatever it is you wanted to do, and then this idea of feeling that the lie is the fear that if you choose the wrong thing, or you choose the opposite of what the person requests, that you will somehow lose. So there's fear, there's self-sabotage. I mean, it's got everything. Appeasement's got it all.
Yeah. It's like I see like a web.
it's got all of it. So we have to protect against. We have to recognize the biggest trick ever played upon humanity is fear. So someone calls you and you think, I don't want to do this, but if I tell them this, I'm afraid they won't like me. I'm afraid they won't call me again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid it's the last movie that will ever play. And but it's all of this fear that is always far off in the future that's not actually fear. It's delusion and illusion. It's the biggest trick ever. And so then you become inculcated into the lie. Like, so you're in the fear, and now you're willing, because of the fear, to tell the lie, okay, I'll come. I want to come to the movie. But you're thinking secretly, which is not really a secret, I don't want to be here. And then you're sitting next to the person, not paying attention to the movie you didn't want to come see, because you want to let the person think that you're happy. So it just goes on. It's deceit. It has all of that in it. But I wanted to bring that forward because we don't want to overlook this idea of appeasement, which is always in the sabotage. But I'd like to speak for a moment about the self-sabotage. The self-sabotage is fueled by guilt. This idea of guilt and punishment. So in our larger experience, having existed beyond just this lifetime, we've had many opportunities to experience someone accusing us and pointing a finger at us and making us guilty. And then as a result, automatically punishment follows. Did you break that lamp, little boy? You go to your room and sit there on the bed and think about mommy's lamp. So there's the guilt, and then there's the punishment, and sometimes much more intense over many lifetimes. So it's fueled by the guilt that that you are guilty, or original sin. You are guilty, and now you must be punished. And the guilt is automatically comes into play to suppress our self-preservation. The guilt is automatic and self-sustaining. It's actually renewable. It's a system of entrapment that's devised and propagated by the weak to weaken others. It is a web of internal control that we have given ourselves to that keeps us tethered to the internal low frequency of suffering and self-destruction. This is not part of creation. This is part of the human experience. This is a man-made construct. So there is that.
Boom, mind blown. That was very...
You did that very professionally, that reprimanding. That was... that I thought you were really talking to me there for a second. I was like, whoa.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
You're looking to see if there was a broken lamp on the floor. It's like, oh, did I break the lamp?
Exactly. And then I thought, well, I guess I'll just go sit in meditation in my room. Yeah.
Yes. So it's, as you were saying and sharing that, I was reflecting on experiences of associated with the guilt, all the narratives that we go through, some with relationships, various types of relationships, whether it was lovers, parent relationships, co-workers, business partners, and everything that you were saying about this idea of guilt and how it's this internal control. It's like implanted, and where this renewable, it's automated, where you may not even need the outside force to project the guilt, because it's already like this dark moral aspect of I'm wrong, and lashing yourself. So it's really fascinating.
There's so many.
So interesting to me is the fact that there's so many other looped patterns. With the self-sabotage one is kind of like a super beast of a like looped pattern, right? Because it's got, there's so much intersectionality with, like you were mentioning, appeasement, guilt, punishment, and it's like the perfect storm of what you need to like demoralize and degrade yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you want to speak further on that?
Oh, absolutely. I can offer much firsthand experience on self-punishment. I made a joke to Loyola the other day that I noticed there was a pattern of me being a Susan Lucci. I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but it was this soap opera star. Was it in the 80s or the 90s? And she, I think in that era, and she had gotten all these nominations for awards, but she would never actually win the awards. And I started seeing that echoed throughout my life. And I actually went through an experience where I traced that all the way back to childhood and realized that there were many instances where I had come so far and then somehow I had sabotaged myself in the end. And I told Loyola, I said, after Of the Sun, I'm not a Susan Lucci anymore. I'm getting that Golden Globe, you know.
Well, and that actually is very key. I'd like to just note what you just said, Jessica, that
sure,
truly the solution here is shining the light on the true experience, not your delusion of what you think the experience is, but the factual going through the facts of, yes, I was nominated. Yes, I was runner-up. Yes, I was always runner. And every time I did something or something happened that made me not get it, going through the actual history, event by event, is the solution to self-sabotage, where you can see your responsibility in every situation. Then the opportunity for correction arises like the sun coming up and shows light on what you have done yourself. And then it's correctable because it's you. It's not the hordes and the millions and all the farmers coming with the pitchforks. It's not them, it's you.
Yes. So hearing that mirrors what I experienced in my salt bath. So,
well, wait a moment, because Jessica was going to tell us more.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. Yeah, your best commercial voice there. And I had come to a point. This was a few years back, where I found myself in a job that was completely like sucking my talents away. Like, I had a terrible boss that I was working with, who was an insecure person. And I was in a relationship at that time that was not the best either. The situation around the relationship was not ideal. And I started to see that there were all of these areas of my life that were not where they should be. And when you get that wake-up call, and all of us have had this at some point or another, you cannot ignore that. It's like you suddenly wake up one day and you say, how did I get here? And I remember doing my first session with Tavars for the advanced soul clearing. And it was like my first time ever meeting with Of the Sun and everything. I had no idea what to expect. And I remember you telling me, you have major issues with self-sabotage. And I remember thinking, whoa, yes, that explains pretty much everything, you know, that explains a lot. But to heal that, I've really had to go back and look at, why was I doing this to myself? Why was I going so far? And then in the end, it just fizzled, or things didn't work, or I was like, you know, a nominee, but not a winner, or or, you know, and I think it goes back to, I had connected the self-sabotage pattern. And I think some of you are like this that are listening, with like an overachiever pattern, and your self-esteem was so low that if you weren't giving yourself love, you weren't loving yourself for who you were measuring your worth and your love by your achievements. So I would think, well, you know, when I write this book, I'll be worthy. When I do X or get this fellowship or get this speaking opportunity, then I'm worthy. And I was measuring my worthiness by that as part of the self-sabotage, and then looping the self-sabotage when I didn't get it. But what I had to come to the conclusion of is, one of the reasons I wasn't getting many things was the self-sabotage. It was brewing beneath the surface that was causing the sabotage to happen with things. And like you said, going back through and healing that and calling for correction around it, it's very tricky, and it really permeates your entire life, to the point where, for example, I left an old relationship and got into a new relationship and saw the same pattern surfacing again. And I thought, this is not him, it's me.
Yes.
You know?
And that's the point. And that's actually the point. That is the point. The other really important thing to look at, because people are so convinced that, you know, the things they've heard about manifestation, it's not quite the way people think it is. You can call for things, but what you actually get is what you are. If what you are, if you're operating as the runner-up, that's what you get. If you're operating as the winner, if you are the winner, you win. If you're operating as the slave, you get, whether you're the president of the company, your experience is one of being a slave. You get what you are, because that is what every cell in your body, all of your DNA, every aspect, every hair on your head is being who you are. You take yourself with you everywhere you go, even into contests. You know, so as you become the winner, you then win. As you become the person who protects your integrity, you become integritous. When you become the person who expects more, you get more. So it's an important thing, this idea people have about manifestation is, well, if I just say it over and over again, well, yes, that's true, if it doesn't conflict with who you are. Because overwhelmingly, what you are calling for is your entire beingness, and it is broadcasting 24 hours a day who you are. And so your outcomes always look like who you are. See, we can change that, though, through acknowledging and seeing and following the factual history. Then we can say, oh, I was being a saboteur. I don't have to be. I can now consciously bring myself into being what I want to be. And I think that's really what you were just saying. I think it was important, because this is a misunderstanding about manifestation. It's true, but it has limitation.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, Tavars. I was gonna say, it's kind of like if you don't lay the groundwork, or for the garden can't grow. So you can call for the manifestation all day, but when you're not solid and you have these loop patterns playing, the loop patterns will make sure that it gets discombobulated each time. Believe me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you are looped, how can you be straight? How are you going to be a straight line when you're looped?
That's true.
Just the facts.
Just the facts here. Just the facts.
I like how you were touching on, or Jessica was touching on, this idea of she continued to seek what she wanted, or the validation outside of herself, instead of like self-validating. Lalta has this joke, and I love it. She's like, I don't need validation. And then she pulls out her etheric stamp of validation out her back pocket, stamps her hand, self-validate.
Yeah, you have been validated. Congratulations.
Yeah, you know, and how it must start with you, by being the frequency, be the thing that you desire to experience. You know, if you want joy, you want peace, can't wait till you get that job or that partner or pay that bill. It starts with you deciding, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to be the thing that I want. And I'm seeing how that allows us to be straight, as Lao Tzu says.
This is so true. It brings me to mind of talking to a young man who said he was so frustrated that all the girls who called him were like, do you still think I'm cute? Do you still think I'm pretty? And he was saying to me, I would like them to get their validation before they call me.
Ooh.
Because it's burdensome. And it's burdensome for someone, a young 20-year-old, to have to constantly bolster the ego of every person they speak to because they're looking for outside validation. So there is that aspect of, we must bring to the table something edible. We have to bring food. Everything feeds. Everything in the universe eats. We should arrive at dinner with a dish, not just hungry all the time, because it's exhausting and it's not really the truth. Your validation, if the person says it, then they have to say it every day, every second, every 5 minutes, because it only holds you for so long, because it is not the truth. It is the outside seeking to make the inside what it is. But everything, health, spiritual elevation, everything is inside out, not outside in. So whenever we're seeking the outside to make our inside greater, we're moving in the wrong direction. It is the inside that creates the outside. It is the organs and the bones that create the skin and the skull. It is that truth, period.
Yes. Oof. I see that visual. That's powerful.
And you don't also know, because I remember the books that I wrote, some of the women I was interviewing had been through significant abuse situations. I mean, we're talking at the hands of like militaries or family, even in some countries. And there was one woman from Malaysia, and I recall this particularly. Her family had forced her to sleep on the porch because they didn't want her. She was an unwanted child, and she ended up rising up to becoming like a famous chef in Southeast Asia and in the US now as well. And she said something to that extent. She said, there was nothing to validate me externally, nothing. I didn't have a family member validating me, or I didn't have a boyfriend. I didn't have anything. All I had was myself and a chicken and a monkey. But she said it had to come from within. And she said, one of the things I'm very like blessed and fortunate for that is I got to learn that lesson that has stayed with me throughout my entire life, is that it has to come from within. There's nothing outside of you that will give you that. It might feel like it will temporarily, but eventually you'll go back to that same loop pattern of, okay, I've done that. Now I've got to do this to get that validation. So
Lauta and I have this joke that comes from a comedian that talks about self-esteem, and the key word is self-esteem. Instead of putting it out, waiting for someone to validate, it must essentially come from self. I mean, it's in the word.
It's actually true to the point of the woman you wrote about. We are born alone. We do not necessarily die in a group.
Yeah.
We are equipped. We come with all that we need. We have all of the bells and whistles that we need. We just need to be, given the shelter and the nutrients, and it would be good if it was love, and it would be, but the truth of the matter is that recognition is your self-preservation. That is your motivation, is that I have me. Let me turn my love towards me. Let me love myself so that me and I can make everything okay. So we all have that. And when we think of it otherwise, when we burden someone else with our happiness, like, you have to make me happy. You have to do the things that I have dreamed about my whole life. You are gonna be the person who fulfills all of my dreams, and and I don't want any lip about it. Don't give me any back talk.
Yeah.
go to the corner.
Having flashbacks. Flashback. May I share a story?
Yeah.
A lot of this has to do with self-love, like really truly loving yourself, having a great sense of self-worth. And there was this, again, is a piggyback of the salt bath. And I had recently experienced some self-sabotage, and I was seeing the thread in my relationships. So my guidance shared with me, go back to your first relationship, or the first big one. Look at that, play that movie. And just to kind of paint the picture for you all, I was in a relationship with a young lady who she was insecure. I'm starting off with that, but this story's going to end with me. So she was insecure and didn't really want me to talk to any other women. I had a lot of women friends, platonic relationships, but that didn't really sit well with her. And guess what I did? I felt guilty. I appeased her, and she deflected in one of the conversations that we had. I was like, why is it a problem? She goes, well, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust those crazy women. I'm like, really? So fast forward, as I'm playing this through my mind and I'm seeing where the relationship went, I saw that the insecurities that she had was really reflected back to me. I was very insecure. I didn't have a sense of value. And it was as if like, well, I'll just paint the picture. By the way, ego, go sit in the chair. So after reflecting back on it, I'm like, wow, she caught this really handsome guy. She got overweight and got insecure, but the young guy was insecure himself and didn't know his own self-worth, and also allowed himself to continue to be abused and feel guilty and continue appeasing, instead of standing up for his truth, which is, I want female friends. I want to be free to choose.
No, so, go to the movies and eat the popcorn.
No, I said no popcorn.
Eat that Sabotage brew.
But again, ultimately, the point I'm getting to is that when I played this back, I saw that it was me all along.
Yes.
It was always me, and she was just reflecting this aspect of myself the whole time. And I'm still going to go through the other experiences that I've had, but I know it's going to be the same outcome. It's going to be the same story where, hey, it was you all along. It was self-sabotage.
Well, you voluntarily subjugate yourself to make sure that you don't achieve any higher standard than you're willing to achieve because you're afraid. The fear factor comes in. So you appease the fear by making yourself smaller than you are. So that another person, because you have made yourself weaker, they can feel stronger. So now she feels like, I'm stronger because now I have dictated to you that you are not to speak to another. And now I am no longer afraid, which is not true. This is another self-sabotage act, but all of it actually is coming from you. It's all about you, and other people are just expressing to you ways for you to see it. They are truly helping you by playing out the different parts in your drama or tragedy, depending.
Yes, and I can see how that's a willful action. It requires a person to willfully make themselves small. It's like, okay, in the face of the vibrato of the fear and the guilt and the appeasement, it takes two to do that tango, from my understanding.
So the level of diminishing that you have to be willing to accept when someone says, I am uncomfortable because we live in a world where people are crazy. So I feel that you must now never speak to anyone other than me so that their crazy won't affect me. And that's essentially, you're like, okay, I'll do that. And of course, that's not a sustainable model because we live in a world with other people. And it then puts you, it wasn't your idea. It was something you agreed to appease another person's fear, which was really your fear. Mm-hmm. That if you were bigger or seen, that you would somehow be in danger. And so she was saying, I feel danger if you are yourself with others. Do you see it?
Yes, I see it. Because when I was myself with others, there was a strong bond and connection
that made you stronger.
Exactly. Yeah. fascinating.
That is tricky AF.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, self-sabotage is like, there's like a storm, and then there's like the superstorm where like 5 tornadoes convene, you know, like we've all seen the footage of those. That's self-sabotage. That's like the visual that I have of it.
I agree. I think it's that way. I'd like to move into this idea of, since you mentioned, you know, some people do sabotage themselves with food or other addictions. But one of the things that would help us is if we made a point to make ourselves aware to stop believing in things that we know are not true. Like if we we were teaching people how to define and to divine the truth, and in one class, and we were talking about food, and this was actually a class Tavars taught, and we were saying, is this food good for you? And we're going to check, and we can determine and calculate out to the decimal point how much truth is in it. And the emotional energy was towards the woman liked hot dogs. And so the emotional energy was that she wanted the hot dog to be the truth, that it was healthy for her because she didn't want to stop eating them because she liked them. So every time we tried to teach her, she would get all the other answers correct. But when it came to hot dogs, she's like, no, these are good for me. I know they're good for me. And her emotional palate made her actually lie to herself in the face of being able to identify truth, because she so wanted the hot dogs to be healthy. So this is an example of, we have to stop believing in things we know are not true. There are many things that we know for sure are not the truth, but we tell ourselves they are so that we can sabotage ourselves.
Oh my gosh. And that's exactly what was happening in that experience with that relationship. I knew I was a good guy. Like, look,
Trustworthy.
I'm trustworthy, loyal. It's not going to happen. However, I was convinced, yo, you're going to do something. And my inner being knew that was a lie. But again, I accepted the lie of someone who was in fear. But again, it was me.
It's like, I have to put myself in the straitjacket, because even though I know I'm not crazy, just in case I see someone who's crazy and I catch craziness,
nothing's gonna happen. Oh, that's
exactly.
Wow. It's oh my gosh, it is wow just seeing that.
It is so important in this time that we live in that we be very pristine and very clear about what is healthy for us, what is the truth. We need to be clear on our levels of joy. We have to have joy and sweetness of life in our experience so that we can be balanced. And it is important that we take that clarity into our food relationships, into our medical relationships, into our COVID-19 relationship. You know, we live in the world where our ecology is now influenced through and through the air, the trees, the dirt. It has been here on the planet. People are testing plants and animals. Everybody is showing up with it. We have to now start believing that it's outside and inside, that it's not just, you know, it doesn't make sense. It's incongruent to think that all the tests show that, you know, monkeys in the jungle now have it and all the plants do, but somehow, you know, the steak on your plate doesn't have it. You know, how could that be possible? How could all the workers be sick and suffering and have to be off work and then the meat be healthy? How is it possible that if we fry it, boil it, cook it, that we have cooked the suffering out of it? We have to start making sure that we don't believe in things that we know for sure are not true. So I think this is important, and this applies to your hot dogs and your bacon.
I'm looking into the future with our listeners, and I can feel them like, wow. Yes.
Sometimes you're doing it, you don't even know that you're doing it. That's the thing. Like, nobody really puts a label on self-sabotage, because when those things were happening to me, I never associated those with self-sabotage. And then when you said that, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's exactly what's been happening.
Well,
And I know, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
well, I was just going to say, and it's because you saw yourself in it. Usually with sabotage, we only see the person doing the thing to us. We usually ignore our part in it. But when you see your part and look at it, it just becomes overwhelmingly clear, especially for someone like yourself and many of those with Of the Sun. We're calling forth the truth and we want to know. So it's like you get to see it.
So the levels of courage that are necessary to even attempt, the courage that's required to even want to know the truth, to want to call, to hear the truth when others speak to you, when your friends or your lovers speak to you and you can look into their eyes and you're calling, let me hear the truth of what you're saying. That requires courage in most people's lives. To require yourself to see on the television or the news, to see the truth, that requires a great deal of forthright courage to move forward, to do something better than to require yourself to speak the truth in the face of what happens. As when a person calls for truth, they should prepare for war because that's likely to be the next step. And we all know that. And so we have all been raised to avoid war and thereby avoid the truth. So this calling for the truth of coming to Of the Sun, asking to be told the truth. We say it on the website. If you come here, we're gonna tell you the truth. And so get ready. Fasten your seatbelts. It's on. And so with these podcasts, this is the truth of the experience, and it can be factually proven. So I think all of us know that there's a certain amount of fear we have to put down just to be in the conversation of truth, just to, in your quietness of your own meditation, to call for truth and mean it. There's a certain amount of fear that has to be put down within us. Have you noticed?
Yes, I have. And it's funny because you must have felt me thinking on it. I was just in deep thought, like, yeah, good point. And through my experiences, I've seen that there have been moments where, due to fear, I did not want the truth. Like actively, oh no, I don't want to know that because of what that would mean. I'd have to confront something. But I also see on the flip side, like when you do confront it, it's like this weight drops. It's like calling forth correction. And I'll use that example because that's been something that's been very relevant. And when you call forth correction, it's as if the universe will bring to you the things that require the correcting, which in some of my experiences were things that I feared addressing internally and playing out externally. But at the same time, it's like calling on the frequencies of correction pulls forth the necessary energy to correct the thing.
Yes.
When you can move through it and joyfully at that, like, yeah, let's do this. So it's, yes, my answer is yes, I can see your point.
Jessica, you have anything on that before we move on?
Oh goodness, yeah, I have many personal examples lately of calling for correction, and honestly, the correction piece, I had wished I had known that many years ago, and I'm glad that I'm learning that now while I'm still like relatively young, so that I can move through my life in the years to come and like remove these patterns. And the sky is the limit when you remove these patterns. Really, it is. Like there's so much more potential when these patterns are removed.
Yeah, I'd even say when calling forth the frequency of correction, it's put me in this space of, there's so much to do. There's so much room to grow. It shifts the perception of, oh, universe, here's another one that I have to learn. No, it's like, another opportunity to be better. And one of the things that I realize is, of course, what you do for you do for all. So you correct yourself, everybody around you benefits from you being correct, you being the you that you were designed to be.
Absolutely. It no longer requires the people who were your persecutors to persecute you, because you no longer need the lesson. So they have come and are acting out the parts to help you reach this place of understanding of who you truly are, and you free them from having to applaud every time you fall.
Yeah.
To be your saboteurs. You free them. Like, they don't have to go, yes, he got it. Yes, his car crashed. Yes, he got it.
Yeah, that was me.
It truly frees all the ones in the family, it frees everyone who you feel has been a saboteur externally, who are really helping you see. Then the idea of the truth and correction help, as my guidance has said to me, find the golden nugget. Find the golden nugget in each experience, and then you have hit the riches, the wealth of your life experience, because you can see all of the different facets of how you and the rest of humanity have gotten where we are. This is so significant.
Yes, just let that
Are
breathe.
you guys sharing laughter over there?
Well,
while I'm a continent away.
Jessica, I was at a loss for words. I said to myself, I need to just let that breathe and marinate, because it was like, ooh, that is the truth.
It is. It really is. Yeah. And anyone listening to this, no matter where you are in life, if you are learning about this now, consider yourself saved, because if you do the practices, of course, you got to do practices. But consider yourself free of these patterns from this point on, if you decide to be, and address them.
I want to I think we may need to talk about this on another podcast in the future, because there's much more to be said. But this idea of the pain and suffering you experience when they're in the moment of not winning the contest, or when there's some painful enslavement or imprisonment, can lead you to a higher level of truth, which you can factually determine by looking at the facts of your experiences. Once you reach the higher level of truth, like if you come to me and you say, I'm in pain, my tooth hurts or my hip hurts or something's wrong with me, and we can work through it where you can see the self-sabotage, the pain will start to ease, reduce, and be alleviated, because the pain and the suffering are to get your attention to make sure that you make the correction, and then you free yourself. And this is important to make sure it happens. And so this process of self-sabotage lets us see the human experience. There isn't anyone here who has not experienced it, seen it, done it, or participated in it in some way. So this is a universal concept, and the solution is call for the truth. The solution is examine the facts. The solution is know that you are the saboteur in your own story, and that everything is from the inside out, and have the courage to come forward and ask for correction. So I'd like to end our podcast today with that thought.
I'm in agreement, most definitely. So with that being said, we'll end this podcast. So for those who are tuned in, go ahead and hit that like, or get in that chat box. Let us know what your thoughts are. Some experiences on sabotage, self-sabotage, maybe some of the tools for those who are of the Sun-ers that you have utilized to flip the frequency or flip the script. And we are encouraging you to call forth correction. Check out the Imlakesh products for the frequency waters to call forth correction within your experience. We'll have links below. And tune into our next podcast. May we continue to call forth the frequencies of truth. May we speak the truth, hear the truth, and see the truth in all things. In Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.